Let us call our meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the Town of Pittsboro Board of Commissioners for Monday, September 26th, 2022. And as is our custom, we'll begin with a moment of silence. Thank you. Commissioner Farrell, will you lead us in the pledge?
Thank you. Would everyone rise for the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. You have before you the agenda for this evening. Is there a motion to accept the agenda as set or to modify it?
I'll make a motion to modify to remove items 1 and 4 from the consent agenda, make them new business 2 and 3.
Thank you. Any further modifications? And is that a motion, Mr. Shipp?
Yes.
And is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mayor Pro-Tem Baldwin. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries unanimously. All right. Under citizens matters, let us first welcome our interim town manager, Hazen Blodgett, and to his first meeting as our leader here. And so tonight's agenda will be, it looks like it's actually sort of a light one, but we'll.
Careful, say that.
Yes, I just jinxed it, didn't I? But we'll look forward to having his expertise as we go through the next few months. And I think he's already been broken in to a number of things here in the town, including Burley's Cheeseburgers. So that's so welcome, Hazen. Do you have an update for us this evening?
Yes, ma'am. I'm happy to do that. I'll make it short too, but it has been a great 6 days. I want to thank you all for hiring me, and I'm very honored to serve you all, the staff and the citizens of Pittsboro. I can assure you I've hit the ground running. Previous manager Chris Kennedy spent several days with me, really giving me the download, which I appreciate very much. The rest of the staff has been super helpful. We're going to have a department head meeting tomorrow morning. So it's very exciting. It does look like we got Colby under his leadership. We're monitoring the hurricane, right? That's important.
Yes.
And of course, we know the sewer force main is a top priority. And we're talking about staff office space, among other things. And just want to remind you all that my contract runs through January 31st. The hiring process for a manager is difficult and time consuming, but I want to thank you guys for being so on top of it, because time will fly by. That's the thing that always amazes me. And the holidays are really around the corner. So all the best to you and keep up the hard work. And I'm happy to serve.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We look forward to all that. My update consists of, this has been a very busy time lately. On the 17th of this month, I moderated a panel that was put on by the Chatham County Library. That was a panel on women in public safety and judicial careers. And it was an hour and a half of just exquisitely wonderful discussion of women in public safety and law enforcement. And that was put on by the library in connection with a commitment that they made last year to celebrate women in Chatham County. I also, on the 22nd of September, participated in the welcoming and opening of the county fair at our fairgrounds here in Pittsboro. And several other commissioners were there that night. Pamela Baldwin and John Bonitz, I believe, were there. And we had a wonderful fair opening and walked out on the Midway. I'm here to say that I think that the Midway has some new rides this year. And John, I think I saw that you tried them out with the kids.
Sure did. I even got woozy in my head, some of those rides. It was quite fun.
Good. On Saturday, I did the welcome at the dedication of the lynching memorial in the courthouse area. It was a very moving ceremony. It was, I think Kyle Shipp, you'll agree that that was just an incredible moment for our county to acknowledge and move towards reconciliation for the 6 lynchings that occurred in Chatham County. Upcoming, tomorrow I'll be doing the Chatham County Roundup on WCHL Radio in Chapel Hill. And on October 1st, there's a benefit concert that's going to be here at the Conference Center, which is offering to supply scholarships for our high school folks. And it's being put on by Bynum Front Porch, and it's going to be Elvis and his band. And so say what you will about that. On the 12th, we're going to have a State of Chatham done by the Chamber of Commerce here again in the conference area. As to concerns, I remain concerned about the Atlas Boone property on Hillsborough Street. And if we could have an update from the planning department on that at next meeting, that would be excellent. We've also gotten several complaints about the traffic in the dirt at the concrete company on South Small Street. And then I think we have a shared concern about the compressor at the used car dealership that several of us have heard from constituents. And we tried to address that last meeting, but had some connection problems with people from the neighborhood that were concerned about that. So Mayor Pro-Tem Baldwin, do you have comments and updates for us?
Thank you very much, Mayor Perry. I do not have any additional updates other than to say that the Chatham County Fair was a success, and we look forward to everyone participating next year. There was good attendance, especially on Saturday. But again, we all appreciate everyone that was there and anticipate your attendance next year. Thank you again. I will have Triangle J Council of Governments meeting on Wednesday. I will not be there in person. I will do a Zoom, and everyone is invited because that is an open meeting. So it starts at 6 o'clock. And so I do share some of the concerns that the mayor has indicated. So hopefully we can discuss those and get to somewhat of a resolution. Thank you very much.
All right, Commissioner Bonitz.
Yes, thank you. I'm still working on the update or background piece that I had mentioned at the last meeting regarding the current state of climate change and its impact on our community and the current range of opportunities for mitigation and adaptation. But I do want to intend to bring that to the board at some point. I also want to touch on the noise complaints. Yes, the concrete plant on Small Street, but also big praise to Chief Shorty Johnson and the police department for controlling the noise from cars and trucks with modified exhaust. Thank you, sir. It definitely in the past, half a year or so, it seems like I've noticed a big improvement there. And the used car sales air compressor is definitely a concern. I've experienced it myself. Additionally, I've been hearing more complaints about the noise coming from the car wash operation at Claps Laundry. And this is coming from gas-powered pressure washer and gas-powered leaf blowers that are used to dry the cars. And in both cases, I think that there are quieter options available to them. Let's see. I also mentioned to Mr. Blodgett, and I will put this in an email as I promised, but if we could add several things to the paving list, I believe that staff keep a list of locations that need to be paved or repaved. In particular, there is apparently a repair that was made on Belmont Road to a water main break, and that has not been paved, and that's been several months. Chatham Forest Drive, there's major subsidence in recent months around a storm drain there. And the concern is that there must be some underground erosion that's causing the change in the pavement surface to subside so dramatically in recent months. And another spot that, I don't know whether it's no man's land or what, but it's right off the town circle, the courthouse circle, Neil's Convenience Store. There's a spot bridging the sidewalk and into the street. And those are the three that have been brought to my attention. It'd be great if we could get those added to the, I guess it's a Powell bill list or similar. And the trash recycling contract, I don't think that has come back up again, but in my earliest career, I started in solid waste management, and I administered or ran the solid waste for a community of 13,000 people. And at that time, municipalities asking for customized wheeled trash carts was commonplace. Embossing or imprinting with the name of the town. And I think just sticking with the color scheme that we've had with waste management is not too much to ask. And so that is the ask that's been made of me, from my neighbors, to not have fluorescent trash carts. And given that they're requesting an increase from 2-year contract to a 5-year term, that seems a reasonable request. Moreover, I'd like to ask if they give us a report on their plan for reducing emissions from their fleet. I know for a fact that they're doing it. I don't know if they have a plan, but I know that they're doing it. They're using more alternative fuels than many others in their business. And I'd simply like to give them the opportunity to brag about what they're accomplishing in their fleet conversion and how they intend to continue improving. And so, Mr. Blodgett, that item in particular, given how much you've got on your plate, I would only say that needs to come forward if they get back to you and say, where are we with this? That's my request. And thank you also very much for passing along the memo from NCDOT regarding speed limits on Hillsborough Street. For the benefit of the public, NCDOT did an analysis using their conventional method, and they decided that there's no reason to decrease the speed limit from 45 to 35. The thing that I would point out is that this is a residential neighborhood and that there are houses that are right up on the street. And as I understand it, the history of that neighborhood, And Mayor Pro Tem Baldwin, I hope that you'll correct me if I get any of this wrong, is that originally it was 45 all the way into town, I suppose probably around the top of the hill or Chatham Mill. And that was where it changed to a lower speed limit, and that a fatality, a young boy was killed, and that a Ms. Geraldine Taylor, who lived at that time on that stretch, was the champion to urge the town board to get that speed limit lowered to 35. And indeed, it was lowered to 35 in that section. I hope that we don't have to have another death. The memo in question from NCDOT said that they did an analysis and that on this stretch of Hillsborough Street in question, there have been 12 crashes in 5 years. And what really sticks in my craw is that either Chapel Hill or Orange County have recently had 15501, the same highway, had a stretch of that highway lowered from 45 to 35 at Southern Village.
True.
It's a longer stretch with fewer entrants and exits, far more traffic, and that section has only had 8 crashes in 5 years. We've had 12 crashes in 5 years. That section's had 8 crashes in 5 years. How is it that they got their speed limit lowered, but we can't get ours lowered? This is a request from citizens, and I'm advocating for it, and I'm determined to continue advocating for it because I have great compassion for these folks who live on this stretch and can't enjoy their front yard because of the speeds. I believe that there have been 2 fatalities along this stretch, one of them more recently, but I couldn't find the details on it. So that's enough on that for now, but I do hope that perhaps whomever is from our planning staff is still working with NCDOT could ask that that be revisited. I would actually like to request 3 specific things. The memo offers the actual study to be shared. I think that study should be shared and published on our town website. I'd like to hear a detailed explanation from NCDOT of how it was that Orange County or our town of Chapel Hill achieved their reduction in speed limit on the same highway in a 4-lane stretch as opposed to a 2-lane stretch up there adjacent to Southern Village. And ask number 3, I'd like to ask that a new analysis be performed by the Complete Streets Division of NCDOT with special attention to the overall traffic system running from the courthouse circle all the way to the stoplight at Charger Boulevard. I think that by casting a broader net, we're going to get a more comprehensive understanding of the system of traffic along this stretch of road, because it seems pretty clear that if the speeds were lowered in this 45-mile-per-hour section, we wouldn't have such a huge problem with backups in the section where Commissioner Shipp and Mayor Perry live, where from the Chatham Mill to the courthouse, very often it's backed up bumper to bumper. Again, because I think there's a stacking effect due to the higher speeds up farther north. So I don't think I'm advocating for anything radical here. As I understand it, this is in line with the National Transportation Safety Board's recommendations, the NACTO, the National Association of City Transportation Officials. Higher speeds result in more crashes, injuries, and deaths. And I think that we can do better. And I'm very glad that outgoing manager Chris Kennedy sent that memo. I'm glad that we've got a response back from them. For me, that response was inadequate and unsatisfying. So I'd really like to see the actual study. I'd like to hear an explanation of the Chapel Hill situation. And I'd like to see a new analysis done by the division within NCDOT that actually cares about reducing deaths from highway traffic, from speeds. And that would be the Complete Streets Division, I believe, because they're attending to all the users of our road systems, not just cars. The final thing that I'll mention is that we've been having email exchanges about the letter of intent for an application for a grant to FEMA, the FEMA BRIC grant. I think you've all seen the emails coming about. The context for this, again, is our drinking water plant. We know we're going to have to expand it. We don't know whether it's going to be expanded before or after a merger with Sanford. We know we're looking at possibly an expansion from 1 million gallons per day to 9 million gallons per day of drinking water production. We know our prior manager informed us that that would be an estimated $2 million to $6 million just in conventional electricity upgrades for Duke Power to do exactly the way we've always done it. A $2 million to $6 million price tag for transformers and wires leads me to believe that a lot more could be done with a comprehensive view, possibly including solar power, possibly including batteries for backup. And FEMA is offering grants for these things. And so what I would propose is that we submit this letter to the State Department of Public Safety, expressing our intent to look at the economics of this and to hire a feasibility study. Because we need to know the cost before we go into any venture like this. We do need to know what the payback might be and how it would compare to this $2 million to $6 million expenditure in regular old wires and transformers. So I have drafted that letter based on Chris Kennedy's draft from last year. And Mr. Sawyer, thank you for looking into the BCEGS rating that DPS said we needed to have. And I would like to ask if we have support from the board to pursue such a grant. Questions?
Are there questions for
Sure, I've left something out.
John?
Yeah, I have a question. I may have miswrote this down wrong. John, you mentioned in 2 million to 9 million, was that gallons per day?
Oh, I think we're at 1.5 million of clean water production, drinking water production. And
Right.
I think our studies have told us we need to get to 9 million gallons of drinking water production.
But I don't think our water source will handle is acceptable to 9 million gallons.
Don't we already have a permit to draw up to 9 million?
No, I think it's 8.
Okay, 8. All right.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah,
I'm off. But we're
Yeah.
gonna have to expand our plant dramatically, right?
right.
And so we also have to still do the engineering work to figure out exactly how we're gonna go about doing that. And the best way to incorporate energy efficiency in particular, but also renewable energy sources and storage, is to do it at the very beginning, and you can first start thinking about it and plan to reduce this cost in favor of increasing this cost and things like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I've always said, we got one of the best water supplies. It's now the quality of water that we need. And so, anything we can do to upgrade that plant, I'm all for it. I was a little confused on the gallons or the $1 million. And you may want to repeat that again for
Sure.
myself.
I don't remember the exact gallonage that we'll be producing at our maximum, but I thought it was 9, maybe it's 8.
Well, I think that's all we're allowed from the intake and through the Hall River.
Yeah, but that's a huge expansion of plant for that facility.
Right.
It's going to require huge investments in capital. And what Chris learned from Duke Energy is that it would cost us just, again, in wires and transformers, power poles, whatever, it would cost us between $2 million and $6 million to get conventional electricity upgrades for a plant of that size. Now, that doesn't include backup generators. And so I think that one firm told me they do it for free, but I think for a very modest price, when I'm hearing between $5,000 and $10,000, maybe $15,000, we can hire feasibility analysis to look at a broader system that incorporates solar power and battery electric to shave peaks so that we're not demanding electricity for our pumps, et cetera, when the rest of Duke Energy's system is running at peak load. So we wouldn't be subject to such extreme power prices. And that's how we could potentially afford such expensive equipment as batteries and solar. But again, all I'm proposing is that if we're on an agreement, that we send this letter in, and we ask staff to send this letter in to DPS and get in line for the money because they're wanting to give it away.
Does the board feel comfortable confirming that at this point, or shall we put it on as another piece of new business for a vote?
That's a good point.
You might want your manager's input into this.
Oh, certainly.
So
Well,
thank you.
I think to that point, let's put it on later on new business
Okay.
and then
Thank you. Thank you, Fred.
All right, we'll put that as new business item number 3 then. Thank you, John. Commissioner Farrell?
No, ma'am, I'm sorry. I was out of town for the PBA meetings. I missed that and I don't have anything else.
And Commissioner Shipp?
Sure. On Tuesday, the 20th, went to the Boys and Girls Club. The VFW had donated an American flag. And so we went there and heard 75 kids, which is the attendance now, doing the Pledge of Allegiance all at the same time. We did it 3 times because they all wanted to, at least 3 times, I think. And and the VFW also donated money on behalf of the Pittsboro police related to September 11th also. So appreciate them attending also. And as you said, on Saturday, attended the unveiling of the memorial, and that was a really good ceremony. Our EDC meeting was moved to next week on Wednesday, so I'll do that next week instead of this last Wednesday. Our next AHAC meeting is in November, but the applications are open for that money from the county. Other updates, we had the meeting with Greensboro back in July and asked for a few specific things from that meeting. And as of this week, I think those are wrapped up. So appreciate Kent running those down. Back in April, we had the Bardak discharge, which affected our plant, but not necessarily our water. But Ecolab was the company responsible for that, and they did repay us for our costs that we had associated with that. So Greensboro helped make that connection, and then Ecolab reimbursed the town of Pittsboro for the costs that we had for that incident. So really appreciate them taking responsibility for that and for the connection there with Greensboro. And then also just today, they sent us a letter of support for SRF funding for the projects that we're going to be submitting here. So they're supporting our applications for that grant funding to improve water quality, to remove 1,4-dioxane, which we don't currently do in our plant. And then Colby had put this out, but our water plant also got the another area-wide optimization award for turbidity removal. So just continued work there. Concerns generally, I keep forgetting to bring this up. I don't know if I did before, but I think for about 6 months now, we've had an option on the website to submit a complaint or a concern, and that's in the planning section, I believe, but that goes directly to our consultant for code enforcement as well as staff. So that's available to anybody to submit something that's around town. Works for commissioners also, I've learned, but and then Hazen, you had mentioned the force main bid. Do we have or can we get weekly updates on that until it goes to bid?
Okay.
That's probably the hottest project in town. So I want to keep on that, or if anybody needs to come back to our meeting and give us an update directly, we can do that next meeting also.
Kyle, are the bids closed?
They're not even put out to bid yet.
Thought they were put out like 2
No, they
weeks.
have not been put
They
out.
have not been.
I don't, so we got all the easements secured, you know? Okay. So we don't have all the easements secured yet. So there's still steps.
How many easements? One. Okay. Do we have a timeline of tomorrow? So do we know?
For the easement.
Yep, yep. But we have everything else.
No, I think it was something that they were waiting on from the engineer, Hazen. I mean, I don't know what they're doing with it, but they were supposed to submit something. But there was some communication between Kent and Wooten. They were waiting on something for that because they had to respond to somebody, but they were talking about advertising in a couple of weeks. And the advertisement would apparently last a month.
Okay. I'd like to have Wooten come back to our meeting next meeting if they could and give an update.
The other issue, and I think that Chatham Park was going to address it, is they're waiting on a sign off from somebody with the state of North Carolina. I can't remember the name.
Right.
And I don't know if I haven't seen that we got that.
Okay,
I'm behind on emails. I'll tell you that too. So
sure. Well, hopefully in 2 weeks, we can announce that it's out to bid. Then it'd be a quick update.
Thank you, Commissioner Shipp. Commissioner Vose.
The next Harpo meeting is not until October 13th. And on October 29th, I've got an orientation class for the Arts Council. That's all I have to add to what everyone else has already said.
Thank you. Now is the time for public comment. Madam Clerk, is there anyone signed up for speaking in the public comment period? No? All right, very good. That brings us then next to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda with the amendment of removing items 1 and 4 and moving those to new business?
So moved.
Moved by Kyle Shipp. Seconded by Jay Farrell. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. All right, there are no public hearings, no old business, and our new business agenda has now been amended to take the first item is the business, the meeting minutes for June the 13th, 2022. And the second is the minutes for September 12th. And Kyle Shipp, did you want to give us your thoughts about why that was removed from the consent agenda?
Oh, sorry. Okay. I was thinking the wrong order. So the minutes are, we're on the minutes now. 1 and 2.
Let's do one at a time. One.
Okay, okay.
Mhm.
I mean, same reason for both of them is the change from our previous minutes is that instead of listing out individual updates and concerns from commissioners, as it says, commissioners gave their updates from boards and said their concerns. That's a change. So I just wanted to see why it was made and see, partially what our preference is, but partially what the rules are from the clerk's perspective.
Well, and I don't know if you'd read my reply. And basically I was saying that our town clerk actually was not in that position as of June the 13th. She was in September, but she and I talked about it this afternoon. There were a couple little things that I had but I know, Carrie, you've been doing a tremendous amount of research and are interested in the various forms of meeting minutes. I think we've all talked about the fact that that there's a combination. There's the history aspect of what it is the board has reviewed and why it's been engaged in a certain way, but there's also the actual action. And So maybe you could speak to that for Kyle and the board.
So Commissioner Shipp, to answer your question, with some of the background that I've been researching as a town clerk, the reference guide for the North Carolina municipal clerks references that the minutes need to be about the actions of the board meeting. What you guys have to say is important, but the minutes need to reflect 20, 30 years down the road of the actions that happened in this meeting. I've been reviewing multiple municipalities, talking to various clerks, and they really don't incorporate the updates of the mayor and the commissioners. I have some minutes that need to be updated and approved in a timely fashion for an audit that's coming up very soon. And so at this point in time, for me to streamline and make what's most important in these minutes and get these approved for the audit, I've been trying to streamline a little bit where I can. I'm also getting help from the planning department. So they're helping do minutes on their sections of the former minutes back to October of 2021. So we're just trying to meet the deadlines for the audit, try to appease everyone and making sure we're getting all the really important information in the minutes. So that's why I have kind of streamlined that. I had talked to the mayor a while ago about this, but we didn't have a lengthy conversation at all. I just kind of made it a mention of it before a board meeting, that was something that I was going to be doing because I have been researching on my own time, trying to figure this out in a timely fashion, actually really quickly, so we can get this taken care of. I would welcome any comments or suggestions going forward. If this doesn't appease you, I'm just trying to make sure I'm getting done the minutes for the audit.
Sure. I appreciate that explanation, and I don't have an issue with that going forward either. I think the only small comments, I think we'd apply that to the manager updates also.
Right.
But I think the difference we have now, I know there's been a lot of variation in length of minutes, in content of minutes over time. But I think it's an important concept that what the board approves by a motion is what goes forward, and is critical, going forward. And then also we do have all the meetings available on YouTube now. So that greater context is available, assuming Google stays around. YouTube will also, I imagine. So that's a lot more accessible, I think, for the general public for any context around the specific motions that we pass. So I certainly understand the position you're in trying to get caught up, but I don't have an issue with that format going forward. I just wanted to talk about the change.
Okay.
Other thoughts?
Yeah, I would just amplify that. Thank you, Commissioner Shipp, to say that my hope is that when we have adequate staffing, that we might be able to get back to something, maybe not verbatim, but once we get to that critical goal of compliance with the law and updating the historic records that are so remiss. And then perhaps once you're not doing two jobs, you're just tending to one job. I think it'd be really wonderful if we could get back to that little bit richer content and exploration of the dialogue that happens behind these decisions that we make. I know it's a tough ask. I've done minutes myself. I marveled at Ms. Alice, our clerk, during most of my tenure on this board. I marveled at her ability to do it as well as she did. So I know that it's not a small ask, but hopefully when we've got more hands on deck, we can get a little bit more of the story.
Great.
Thank you.
Other thoughts?
I guess just to be clear, I was saying I'm okay with less of the story. And that more of this, all of the story is out available. But the motion is what is critical. So I'm okay going forward with less of the story. Just to be clear what I was saying.
Well, in that case, although there is somewhat of a difference between thoughts here, is the board then prepared to approve the minutes for June the 13th, 2022, to begin to catch us up? And then we'll ask the same question on item number 2 about the September minutes.
Sure. I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the June 13th. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Bonitz. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Item number 2 under new business then is the minutes for September 12th, 2022. And the same applies to those. Would you make a motion for that, Commissioner Shipp?
Yes, motion to approve.
And second.
And seconded again by Commissioner Bonitz. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, likewise a unanimous vote. Then under new business item number 3, we will return to John Bonitz's ask for a feasibility study with respect to using alternative energy sources at the whatever expansion of our water plant there should be in the future.
Thank you. So again, this is all speculative based on the expectations. We're going to expand the drinking water plant. And that in order to reduce the total capital cost of the project, we might explore the feasibility of using innovative technologies to reduce the overall cost of the capital project and the overall energy bill going forward. The deadline for this letter of intent is October 3rd. A letter that I didn't actually draft it. I revised Chris Kennedy's letter from last year's submission, which was rejected for mainly the purpose that it didn't stipulate what the cost of the project was. There was some confusion in the letter. The project envisioned is just a feasibility analysis. And I have to leave that to staff to find out those costs. I've inquired with a number of folks. One engineering firm that does this work says he would do that feasibility analysis for free. Another firm has indicated something between $10,000 and $25,000, depending on the complexity of the project. I think the importance of pursuing the grant for this is that there is a bias in FEMA's grant-making process, where if you have gone through this first step with a feasibility analysis, then you get an extra 10 points, I think, in a larger second ask if you go back to them for funding for example, battery backups for drinking water plant, or solar plus batteries for drinking water plants. So I do think that it's worth our time and effort for future capital investments to pursue asking DPS for these funds.
And will you make that a motion?
Sure, I move that manager Blodgett and staff submit to DPS a letter of intent for a FEMA BRIC grant for a feasibility analysis of solar plus battery backup at an expanded Pittsboro drinking water plant.
You've heard the motion by Commissioner Bonitz. Is there a second?
I have a question.
Yes, sir. Can we have a
Yeah.
second so that we can
Okay.
discuss it?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Vose. Thank you. Mr. Farrell, what did you?
I guess I'm a little slow tonight, but I can support this, but I'm really not do not want to spend any money to have an outside company, $25,000 to see its feasibility. If somebody wants to do it at no charge, I don't have any problem with that. We got a lot going on with this merger. I'm curious if it's worthwhile to do this. Is it going to work out for the town? Is it going to work out for Sanford? So if the feasibility want to do it at no charge, I can support it, but I'm not in favor of $25,000 for somebody to give us a feasibility survey and we not even need it.
That was well, I'm interested to hear from Hazen also, but that was going to be my question is if a firm has agreed to do this for free, what's the advantage of having staff submit a grant to get a grant to pay money for it?
If we haven't gone through the DPS FEMA BRIC process in examining the feasibility of such a project, we're at a disadvantage when we go to them for a grant for the actual infrastructure and equipment.
Okay, so the bias in that grant process is to have got a grant from them, not just to have a feasibility study. You have to have a grant. They have to fund the feasibility study in order for it to bias the future grant process.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. In order to get extra points, they want you to have been a prior client in their grant making program to examine the feasibility of whatever it is that you're proposing to do.
Can we pay the other firm $1? I mean, I'm serious.
I'm
If we
happy
have
to leave
to,
that to staff. That's,
like, doesn't make any sense.
I'm happy to leave that to staff. Now, previously I had the misunderstanding that this was a free grant, 100% cost of paid plus staff time would be paid. I was incorrect in that. Staff costs can be included in such a grant. So administrative costs can be included in such a grant process, but there is a required 25% cost share. So to your point, Commissioner Farrell, let's say that most extreme $25,000. 25% of that, the town would need to pay in order for DPS to cover 75% of costs of the feasibility analysis. So if it were a mere dollar, we're paying 25 cents and DPS will pay 75 cents. But anyway, so Mr. Blodgett, I think you had some thoughts to share.
Well, I mean, Colby and I talked for 45 minutes today and we talked about this for 5 or something. I think there's a couple. Well, I guess I would say one thing I think we all need to be sensitive to is staff time. And that's really a global issue with staff. And you know, and the thing I don't like about this is there's no luxury of, okay, you know, what's actually the staff responsibility here? And then for me, like, and how much time are we talking about? So we don't have time, the luxury of that. And then the other thing that I am struggling with is I get the concept that FEMA would want to see us having, you know, alternate sources of electricity, whether to reduce our carbon footprint or to give us backup. That makes total sense to me. But like, where are we going to get our future water from? I mean, are we going to get it out of Lake Jordan Lake? Are we going to get it all out of the Hall River? Are we going to have some kind of relationship with Sanford? And then what's that look like? Like, what's that a water plant look like? And then to ask for, what I'm struggling with is to me, there's no vision of there's what the plant's going to look like. And then here's the power sources in the backup. It sounds, I mean, I can't visually get my arms around how that all works. And of course, the downside is we don't have a luxury of, okay, let's staff, look at that and we'll come back to you in 2 weeks or whatever the next meeting. So
That's right.
That's what I guess I would say makes me uncomfortable from a staff perspective is I'm at loose ends.
Mhm. And may I ask, did you by chance discuss the EM grants login?
We had 45 minutes to get, I mean,
Waiting on the state to send back. waiting on the state to send back the username.
Okay, so that's already in the works. And it makes sense for that to be in the works for other purposes in dealing with FEMA or Department of Public Safety and any ongoing.
In any instance where we may apply for federal funds to the state, individual assistance, public assistance, hazard mitigation, it has to go through the insurance.
Okay, thank you. So we need to do that anyway. And the BCEGS is the other piece that I think might be consuming staff time. And you were not able to learn anything in what you'd researched so far. So I think that this letter of intent can be submitted with a statement just to that effect. Again, the letter of intent is effectively written because it was written last year and I've updated it. And so other than staff time to review it, get comfortable with it, of course, and submit that through EM grants, I don't believe there's a whole lot more that needs to be done before October 3rd.
Okay. But we did hear one of the commissioners talk about the grant is a 25% match. We've heard commissioners say doesn't want to put in money. I mean, there's got to be some kind of vote or consensus.
Sure.
on the next
Right.
step.
I'm not willing to put in any money to that. I want a feasibility study. That's fine, as long as it doesn't cost us anything. I'm not in favor of doing feasibility studies with additional information, which we don't have at this particular point. If you want to do the letter of intent, that's fine. But in terms of me being able to support that, it would have to be that the town would not have to match those funds.
I understand. Okay. So are you open to supporting the letter to be submitted with a much smaller amount?
What amount?
I mean, as I said, I've spoken to one engineering firm that said they would do this as a course of business development. As a favor to us as a potential client, they would do this analysis. But I've heard from other engineers that it costs between, what was it I said, $10,000 and $25,000. So, you know, I think it depends on who you want to be indebted to have this kind of examination. Now, Commissioner Shipp, I think you have some actual experience with these kinds of systems and perhaps administering similar engineering analysis?
No,
No?
but I mean, from an engineering perspective, I'm not sure what we're even asking them to analyze, if that's that 6 million gallons. So our water plant will do 2 million gallons now. We use about 1 million gallons, but if we're asking them to, imagine what an electrical upgrade might be for an additional 6 million gallons, I mean, we don't know. I don't know how they're going to do the analysis at this point. If they want to do an analysis for free, I don't have an issue with that, as long as they don't need, significant staff input on that either, which we don't have the time for. I mean, that's the other piece of it. It's not just submitting the letter. It's how much time do they need of Colby's or the water plant or any of that, or us here discussing this, So I just don't know how they're going to do it. If they want to do it for free, I think that's fine. And we don't have any timeline for expanding our plant. We don't know if this program will still be available then, if those points would matter in that process. I mean, I'm not sure how that's helping us. As Hazen said, we don't know that we're going to expand this plant even. So
I think we do. I think it just stands to reason we have to get water from somewhere.
Sure.
And we're going to have to, we've already had engineering firms that we hired tell us that we're going to have to get to, what is it, 8 million gallons to meet the needs in Chatham Park. So we know we're going to have to get some more. We don't know how much more from the river. And we also have committed to the lake, the Western Wake, excuse me.
Intake partnership.
Yes, partnership to draw from Jordan Lake. So I mean, we know that we're going to have to expand that plant and additional.
We also have water coming from Sanford too that we're working on. So
Can we get 8 million from Sanford? I don't think that's ever been.
I mean, we don't know, but
So,
I agree with you on doing this analysis early
Yeah.
in a project,
Right.
but we don't even know if there's a project yet. So I think that that's too early. But again, if an engineering firm wants to take this on their time with minimal staff input, I don't have an issue with that. But I'm concerned about the staff input that would be needed to imagine these scenarios for them to do the study. And then obviously concerned beyond that of, paying for that, paying anything for that at this point. Outside of $1, maybe, but even the grant process, it's going to take staff time. The letter of intent, maybe, but I think I agree with getting a head start, but I think I don't even know that we know there's a race right now or what it looks like.
Okay.
Other comments?
I think I'm interested in hearing what it says if it doesn't cost us any money. But mostly because I feel good about the deal in Sanford. Do I qualify it with if it doesn't cost us any money? If we're gonna do a utility merger, I kind of feel like we're trying to solve a problem that they might face one day and trying to imagine what they might be seeing on that day. That just seems like a lot of carts before horses. If we can get information for free and lean into it early on and sort of know what it looks like going in, I think there's a ton of value there. I don't know if it's $25,000 worth of value.
Is there an amendment to your motion that you would be willing to make regarding the cost of the feasibility study?
That number can be put in there, by staff or however. I mean, as I said, I've had this huge range of conversations. And if we don't get in line for the money, then we hinder ourselves, we handicap ourselves in the future if and when we or Sanford Utilities want to make a more efficient water plant. That's what it's about. It's about efficiency. It's about having lower cost of electricity to make the water that we know we're going to have to make. Whether we do it or Town of Sanford Utilities does it.
I think too that energy efficiency can have a broader scope than the specifics that you mentioned in the motion of solar and battery backup. I think
Absolutely.
So
And I imagine those would be considered as well, because those are the low hanging fruit to reduce the total demands, total loads on the plant.
yes. But if we're going after energy efficiency with this, I think it should be a broader scope also.
Yeah, well, it's not just efficiency. I mean, I'm of the conviction that we, society, myself and my neighbors, all ought to be doing everything we can to reduce our total pollution emissions. And that's another important part of this. I also believe that we need to get prepared. I think we're going to have more power supply interruptions in future. I think we're going to have more instability. And this would give us the preparation to be prepared, to be resilient in the face of power outages.
So is the study more site specific? In that it would transfer with the ownership of the utilities if they were to transfer?
Oh, absolutely. And because the study has yet to be done, I mean, we're just asking FEMA basically for their blessings on the study. And then you get in the process of working with them so that if and when you go back to them in future for whatever it is that you need to increase the energy assurance is what it's called, energy assurance. That's whether that's a diesel generator or batteries plus solar, it doesn't really make much of a difference. So it's called energy assurance. And if and when you go back to FEMA for assistance, and I believe that is 100% 100% when it's a big capital project. You get extra points if you've already gone through this process of the feasibility analysis.
So what is the pleasure of the board? Is there further discussion?
There does have to be some nominal cost to the project, otherwise there's no point in going to DPS, Department of Public Safety, for a FEMA grant. So. Yeah.
If the board is ready to vote, then the motion has been made by Commissioner Bonitz, seconded by Commissioner Vose, that the letter that was initially drafted by Chris Kennedy for 2021, revised by Commissioner Bonitz for the FEMA BRIC grant, using innovative alternative energy, is the matter before the board. Those in favor, please indicate by,
Mayor, before you go,
yes.
now, that letter of intent, does that specifically, I need to be clear on that. Does that indicate there are going to be some funds that the town of Pittsboro has to pay? I don't want to
We're not
have to.
going to the Department of Public Safety to ask for nothing. So we're asking them for some amount of funds, and we would have to pay for 25% of the project that we're asking.
So yes, okay, that's clear.
All right. So those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed,
Nay.
the motion fails. The fourth matter under new business is the Main Street Program Facade Funding Reimbursement Request by Realty World. And who is going to lead that? This Teresa Thompson, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening. Property owner and applicant Andrews Realty Company received approval by the Main Street Board on May 21st, 2022 for a facade grant to install a new canopy and a new wall sign. The total cost of the facade improvement project was $15,573.60. The facade grant was approved for the reimbursement of $5,000. This project is a little unique in that it was approved by the Main Street Board, but it finished under the current year's fiscal year. So it's not going to come from the Main Street budget. So staff thought it best to bring it to the Board of Commissioners for reapproval, if that makes sense. So in the future, when we receive a facade grant, we will take the initial application to the board for approval before any of the work is ever done. Once that's approved, staff will ensure that the work is done adequately, and staff will then reimburse the applicant. It would not have to go back to the board again. But since this was approved last year's budget under the Main Street Board, we wanted to close that loop, bring it back to the Board of Commissioners for reapproval under the current year's fiscal year's budget. So your packets include documents that includes the approval documents by Main Street, before and after pictures, and the final receipt showing that the full amount was paid by the applicant. And we also took this request to the Downtown Advisory Board on September 6th, and they recommended approval in a vote of 5-1. So town staff is now requesting the Board of Commissioners review and approve the facade grant reimbursement request in the amount of $5,000. So please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Teresa. Are there questions from the board?
Yes. So one, I thought our policy was $3,000 for a facade grant, but I know that some have gone over that amount previously. What?
So the policy does state that the board could approve beyond $3,000. See, it says at the discretion of Main Street Pittsboro and based on applications received, larger grants may be considered on a case-by-case basis.
Okay. And I see, obviously this has been approved already and the work is done. So, Realty World has kept up their bargain. And then just a question about the agreement too. The agreement is with, what was called Main Street Pittsboro. And it says that it's void if they don't complete by June 30th. So is that what we're saying is we would take that agreement and refresh it by our vote? this evening,
Correct.
Essentially.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Further questions for Teresa Thompson?
I have just one simple question, Teresa. Do we ask for a second bid on any of these facades? Or is it just whoever they take up and first price?
It's currently not a requirement to have more than one bid. From my review of the guidelines, there's nothing in there that says there has to be more than one. So we can look at changing that policy moving forward and require 2 or 3 bids, but at the time, there was not a requirement to have more than one.
That might be something we want to look into the future, maybe over X amount of money has to have a second bid.
Right.
I
That's
think
just,
the 2018 facade grant agreement said that you had to have multiple bids and the town would pay for half of the lowest bid, even if you selected the higher bid.
Mhm.
So I think that's a good policy.
Right. I'm not sure when it was updated, but the most recent version that I have doesn't have that language about needing multiple bids.
Right. That was before the transition away from the town, I think. And then I guess just a comment too about what we said going forward, like these haven't historically come to us for approval. And I don't know that they need to in the future. We approve a certain amount for facade grants. And I'd hesitate for us to start talking about colors and facades or things like that to approve that money, like we have a downtown advisory board for a reason. And I think that, we would trust them to manage that process.
Yeah, I
on our
think
own.
Teresa has made it clear that this is an unusual situation and I don't believe we'll be seeing this kind of request again.
There's not a requirement that it goes to the Board of Commissioners. We have discussed bringing all facade grants to the board in the future, but we do not have to. We do have an advisory board, and if the board feels comfortable having there's going to be a design committee that's first going to review the application, and then once it gets past that committee, it'll then go to the downtown advisory board. So if the board's comfortable with that board making the decision, then we can move forward with that process. I don't think there's a requirement that it has to go to the Board of Commissioners.
And did you say that one of the previous boards that approved it was not unanimous?
The Downtown Advisory Board, there was one vote against it.
Do we know what what the objection was?
There wasn't a reason stated.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Further questions, or is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to, I guess, one more point is that to verify just that, I know we don't have the full accounting back from the Main Street Pittsboro group yet. So I obviously want to make sure that they did not reimburse them for this also, but I'm sure that's why this is here with us this evening. So
Well,
just as we go through that accounting, make sure that we're not doubling up.
well, Michael Fiocco had delivered that to me the other day. I conveyed it then to Heather Meacham, our finance director, and she has audited it. It's necessitated another check coming from Main Street. And that check is about to be delivered or perhaps has already been delivered. So she spotted an error in it, but I think it would still be good to remind her of what the board is doing tonight and make sure that there's not a duplication of effort.
Right. Once the errors are corrected and once we have the documentation of the backup of that.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion to approve the update of the agreement to the town of Pittsboro and $5,000 for reimbursement.
You've heard the motion. Is there a second?
second.
Seconded by Commissioner Farrell. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The last matter here is the miscellaneous, under miscellaneous is a report to the board from the ABC Commission. This is their quarterly update. Hugh Harrington is coming forward to update us. Thank you, Mr. Harrington.
Good evening, Mayor Perry and Board of Commissioners. Some new faces. I'm Hugh Harrington. I am the chair of the Pittsboro ABC Board. Also here tonight, Jamie Fiocco and Beth Turner from the ABC Board. So I hope if you have questions between the three of us, we can answer them. It says it's a quarterly report. It's actually a good time for an end of year report. We just received this last Friday night was our our independent audit of our fiscal year 21-22. And we officially received the report. We have financial records here. One we need to leave with the town. I understand we have one. And I want to pass out a couple of things. One of the things that our auditor says is, he says, oh, sure, thank you. Thanks. Yeah, thank you. Thanks. What he likes to say is that this is what I have to give you. This is the one you need. And he's going to pass this sheet of paper around. It's a one pager. And then a few little summary points here that, we kind of like you guys to know about, that I think at least we'll hit the highlights of, the past year, kind of some things we've seen just recently and some things we think we need to do going forward. So one of the key things from our the highlights from the audit report, and we'll talk a little bit about this, our net sales for the past fiscal year are actually down about 1.2%. At our net position, it actually increased 17%, 2.2% over the prior year. One of the things about mixed beverage sales that's kind of interesting is, the mixed beverage sales were up like 55%, whereas our in-store sales were down about 7%. So we were up one area, down in the other. So it's kind of a reverse of what happened when COVID hit 2 years ago. It was just a complete reversal. So in some ways that makes sense, right? The restaurants open back up, bars open back up. So you kind of expect it to kind of reverse the trend. But, we really, we want sales in a store up. A couple of things we know, or we're pretty sure we could see this that, hurt some of the in-store sales was, remember the construction south of the courthouse, a lot of construction, access was not good for a while. And we could see, those months sales were down. And we had some supply chain problems. Don't know those were, don't have that impact quantified. But we also know another factor is, and there's a new competing store on 64 just west of here. So can't say it hurt us, but we can't believe it helped us. So, those are some things, just in us thinking about why in-store sales may have been down. Those are some things, that certainly came to mind. The income on operations was down. And if you think of it that way, with revenue approximately flat, which it was, we had some expenses that were up. And a lot of those were attributed to some overtime. We were pretty lean at times during the year. I think at one time we were down to 3 people working at the store. Had some people out for COVID, had some family leave, had some people working overtime. So as I'm thinking, we had at least $25,000 of overtime during the year. So we know that was one of the factors in our expenses that we think we can manage and not have going forward. Overall, our cash position improved. That's good, and that's reflected in the town distributions. There was the distributions to the town were 74,000 roughly compared to about 56,000 last year. And one thing notable there, with our improved cash position, that included an end of year distribution of excess working capital of about $19,000. So, that's good, better than it was. So that's moving, that was moving in the right direction. Point out a couple more things here. One of the things that's really notable too, though, is in our current trends. So what we have, we're 2 months into our most recent fiscal year. Not a lot, but already in these last 2 months, we're up about $28,000 in retail sales. So we're actually up now in the store this year. And their mixed beverage sales are up about $14,000. So it's about 33%. And the good news is we're expecting 3 new mixed beverage customers coming online fairly soon. So, the trend that we're seeing right now is looking, very good for sales. And we expect it to be better. So on any of these highlights here, do y'all have any questions that, any specifics you'd like me to answer?
Questions for Mr. Harrington?
I think it's hard to have specific questions since we didn't receive the materials. I did receive them this afternoon from you. Appreciate that. But the rest of, everybody got them now. But I guess generally, if you can talk about excess working capital, I know we've talked in the past at budget sessions about how we're going to split that, what that split is going to be. And then back in March 14, which I think was our last quarterly update from y'all, you had said that we were going to get a $0 distribution instead of, I think we were expecting around 150, 200,000. And at that time, you said it was a painful surprise for us and that you didn't expect it either.
Right.
So how does that happen?
Okay, that's something that I thought had been communicated to you guys better than it was. Apparently not. Okay, so for years, what we were doing was we walked in here and said there was an amount of cash to split. I think that impression, including to me, was what we had done is accumulate a certain amount of excess cash during the prior year that we were going to split. Okay, that's a statutory minimum that, or a maximum, that if you have a certain amount of, over a certain amount of cash, that it's yours, the town, the appointing authority, unless you designate that we can keep some of it. Okay. So what we've done is we come with this big pot of cash every year. And I think the impression was that's from the prior year. Well, it wasn't. Every time we walked in here to talk about the amount of cash to split, it included all the money that you had designated for us to put toward a store in the past. So the question I said was, wait a minute, we're walking in every year saying we have this amount of excess working capital, including in that what you all had told us to set aside for a store. So I'd asked this question many times. It's like, wait a minute, if this money, the board has said, this is for a store, and we're to set it aside for a store, we're not supposed to spend it on operations. It is not working capital. So how is it excess working capital? Well, I was told in the eyes of the statute, cash is cash. Okay, asked this several years. I asked this again 2 years ago, and we happened to have a member from the ABC board at that meeting. And they said, wait a minute, if this money, a part of this money is not working capital, it's supposed to be set aside for a restricted use, a store, as you all or this board or previous boards have designated, it should be put in a separate account. It should be designated as a separate account. And it should be have a statement on there of what it's restricted for. So to me, that made sense because it wasn't working capital. It wasn't money we could spend on operations, but we were told it's supposed to be for new board. So thereafter, the money was put inside there. And the money when we come now is how much excess working capital is there? It does not, it properly now does not include that money because it's not money we can spend on operations. So that was an accounting change. Another thing, if you remember this though, when we were splitting that big pot of money up, the last time we did it, the town requested a 90% distribution of that. That was a big dip into the cash. So those two factors, right now, what we've done is over the last 2 years is come up a little bit. Now we are again above the threshold using the proper accounting with the money that is designated for the store, set aside as designated for the store, not working capital. It's about $460,000, by the way. So that's not in the pot under consideration for excess working capital. So now we're looking every year truly, as it should have been probably, the amount of money, cash that was accumulated during the prior year, how much of that is excess, how much should we then split? And this year, of course, we didn't ask for a split. We just said, well, we'll give the town $19,000. So I hope that helps to understand it. It was odd accounting for some years.
So $19,000 this year, what does that represent if that's not a split?
That's all the excess working capital.
So that's 100%.
Of the excess working capital. It's a statute. They will look at operations, and I can't tell the formula, but you have to have at least this much, a certain amount of working capital on hand. That's to pay your bills. And after a certain amount, the statute, based on your operations, expenses, revenues, other things like that I can't tell you right now. They'll say over this much is you don't need it. Give it back to the town. So we did.
And you don't need it for the new building fund either.
Well, if you want to let us give it back to us, we'll take it.
Well, I
But
mean,
right now we have $460,000 balance in what accumulated for, as designated for a new store. So, this year we didn't come and ask you, do you want to split the 19? We just said, well, there's your $19,000.
well, I mean, two years ago, when we had that discussion about the 90%, 10% split, I was unsure of it because I wanted you guys to be able to build a new store when you build a new store. And I said at the time, I don't want to take 90% of this for you to come back later and say, we need more money and we're not going to give you anything. And then that's exactly what happened the next year. And I think also that, if we're talking about building a new store, I don't think 460,000 is close to that amount.
Well,
But
it's
I
not.
don't-
And that's why I think there's a valuable conversation here was, I know when that process started some years before I was on the board. And when I, in my mind, when I hear new store, I'm picturing new physical store. So I think the question then becomes, well, what do we mean by a new store? Does that mean leasing a space, upfitting a new store, which would be a considerable cost? Is that, I mean, to me, all this is the board's money, really your money. We just work on behalf of the board. Our job is to make money for the town ultimately. It's not really sell liquor, it is. Be careful about that. But, ultimately, we want to make money. We give money to the town. The money for that store should be to build a store that makes more money for the town. And it's a harder question though, when the timing is right. But I think you're right. There was probably a time when $460,000 sounded like a lot of money to Pittsboro. And now you can't go buy a house here in, some of the new houses for that. So suddenly that doesn't sound like a lot of money. But, it could be a good amount to upfit a lease space in some of the new retail that's coming, things like that. So again, to me, that's, before we spend a dime of that, it should be, I think, coordinated with, look, this was designated to us by the appointing authority. We may have thought this at one time, or what is the board's thinking on this? To me, that's how that money, when it gets spent, should get spent.
I agree. And I'll say the same thing I said 2 years ago is I'd like to see a plan of what those expansion plans are, renovation plans, additional store plan, whatever that is, so that we have a goal that we're working towards. Right now, you gave us $19,000, which may not help much on your side or on our side, but we don't know what we're working for. Chatham County just opened up a new store that you said, potentially hurt business. They're about to open another one in Moncure, which will probably potentially hurt business. And we don't have a plan for a future. So I mean, I see some notes on here about disabled access and things, but even before we put more money in the current location, like that would probably wipe out all the money that we have right now, upgrades to the current location.
No, the money, that 460,000 is for a new store. We're not talking about,
Okay.
we're not talking about dipping into that. We understand what that's for. We don't touch it. By definition, it's for a store. So we're not talking about dipping into that.
For renovation of the current store.
No, we're
Okay.
not.
Okay.
Unless
Well,
you say, and if you gave us direction, says, we think that's a better investment. Because the question about the new stores, you say a plan. My bigger question is, when does it make sense? What's going to happen to a new store? We're not going to get any more mixed beverage customers. We completely support that. We have to justify a new store with increased retail sales only. And the tricky part of this is that new store is going to be within 2 to 3 miles of our current store. So we can't think of it as completely additive, right? We have to, it's a tricky one. When does it make sense that with this small geographic area supports? And, in the back of my mind, I thought maybe a pocket store beside the new, up there at the new grocery store. Again, not something I've run by the board or anything like that, but just in mind, what would make sense? What would make sense to start with, something like that. Because, it's, there's the upfit cost, more people, more all that, and you're supposed to make more money on just the retail side of it alone. So it's a tricky question to know, when is that the right time? To me, that's the harder part, not the plan. We could sit here and say we could go, sign a lease. We could take X amount. We can buy shells. We can look at all that. The question is when? When is it right? When does it make sense? And there's not any tight calculus answers to that.
I'm only an expert on one side of the liquor business, and it's not your side. So
I won't ask which side. So anyway, I hope that helps think some of our thinking, or my thinking. I'm actually, a lot of what I'm saying right now is me just talking, and they maybe.
Yeah. No, I mean,
they may be wishing I'd shut up, but
if it's a consultant that helps you figure that out, or what? Because
I think that's what it would take. But one of the things that I would like to point to here is, before we do that, I mean, one of the key things, we have to have really strong management. We really have to have that. If we're going to think about, a multi-store system, expansion, that's some things that strengthen management. We got to have the employees that are going to be ready to do that. And also, I think we have I don't think we're ever going to have a store in a better location than we have right now. I think we're going to need another store, but I think most people here believe in our downtown. One of the things when we say consider the outside store appearance, one of the reasons I brought that up in a general type way, I like to talk about, think about what the south of the courthouse looked like, and think about what it looks like now. You have all this new stuff. Remember how it used to look, here's a building here, a building there. Now we have all this new stuff, and then the ABC store. So it doesn't quite fit in appearance wise, in my opinion, as well as it could. So that's a reason I think that there may be some value in, making it look, more presentable. And I think that could help, with our drive-by sales and stuff like that. So when, the outside, improved outside store appearance, that's one of the things I'd love to get you guys thought on. Do you think that's a good investment for our store to make it, not huge investment, but, make it look like it fits, make it look like it fits a little bit down there in some of the newer stuff a little better. What do you think about that? Feel free to contact me.
I agree. I think it could use a little upfront.
I agree.
Out front, more or less.
I agree.
Okay. But I have one question.
Sure.
If down the road, if we had a new store north of Pittsboro, can on premises businesses go to either store to get alcohol? They have to one store in town to go.
I'm guessing I want to say, I don't know how that would work. I'm guessing you would pick one. And that's another thing I'd like to remind about this store. We have, it's really, there's a lot of space in the back. In fact, the town used to, the county used to actually rent out space, I think, for liquor store. There used to be a weight room back there. We have empty space back there. So it's a great asset to have, and we own it. And so to me, if we do need lots of liquor storage, that would be the place for it. Now, it might be, one of the things we're to support now is call-in orders. And it could be that, somebody could say, well, a place here is on the north side of town, I don't see that, I don't know if there's anything that would say prohibit you from doing it, but you could, we could do a transfer up to another store and somebody, if it was easy for somebody to pick it up that's close by. I mean, I certainly, but I think you would primarily, we have a good, like I said, we have a lot of inventory space there. So it would make sense, I think, that would kind of always, or for a long time, be the primary pickup space for the liquor by the drink customers. But yeah, I don't see why you couldn't have it at another place.
I was just thinking about convenience for the,
Yeah.
north end.
Well, that was actually one of the things that came up this last year. There was legislation that said that ABC stores are to offer delivery service to mixed beverage customers.
I know in Orange County, you have to, the first year, you have to go with designated store, then you can go wherever you want.
Okay.
So that's
okay.
one option, I think.
And I think it's certainly within the system too. I don't know if it's the same. Yeah, I don't know if it's a different store within the same. Yeah, but yeah, good point. Thank you, James. Yeah, there are rules that upon rules, so.
Further questions from Mr. Harrington?
I don't have anything.
Thank you. Thank you for your report, and thank you, board members, for being here tonight.
Okay, and I would certainly encourage you guys to come down to our meetings. We have meetings, we're open to the public just like yours. So if you ever have questions, it's a great time to come by, see the stuff we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And I would like to leave you all with a request or let you know a request that's coming up. One of the things that we are to do is to have an updated travel policy. A simple and customary way to do it is your appointing authority, and that would be you, approves that we could use whatever travel policy you all have in place. So I'm going to probably make a request to the town to say, hey, would you all approve that, provide us a copy of your travel policy and request that you all approve that we could also use it anyways, kind of some bookkeeping that would just kind of help us keep our documents up to date. So that's probably a little thing you guys can expect to see, hopefully it's like a little consent agenda thing, but anyway, thank you for your time.
But
And-
just
and
quickly, you mentioned that when and where are your meetings and where's that posted?
It's posted at the store. They're always the fourth Thursday of the month at 4:30. And we also have a working, I'm sorry, 5:30. Thank you. 5:30 as posted, Thursday, fourth Thursdays. We also have a working meeting scheduled on the first Tuesday of the month at 5:30 at the store. And, those are, we usually meet, we have on occasion had no working session, I think. Actually, we usually had them. So, but, if there's not a particular topic, those might, but you can always count on the fourth Thursday meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you have any more questions, especially about, I kind of didn't want to get into all the details. I can get more into the details, throw you numbers, all sorts of stuff about history of the working capital. If you really want to dig into it, I'd be glad to. It was confusing to me for a while. I'm sure it's confusing to you. And if there's anything at all that's not clear about that, I'll be more than happy to try to, we'll slog through it. I did. So I think I can help you guys slog through it. So anyway, thank you for your time.
Sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and that concludes our agenda, but is there anything weighing heavily on anyone's mind that they'd like to bring up here as we prepare to close?
Just quickly, I mean, we've been doing really well on this, but this item, not having materials ahead of time, I typically prefer to move it off the agenda until the next time, but it'd been a while. So, we want to get them here and talk, but I think we need to have that cutoff of when we have items for reports, whether they're
Agreed.
on the agenda or not. Okay. Yeah. I know,
Anything further? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Mayor Pro-Tem Baldwin,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Bonitz. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. And good evening to you. Good evening.